That's the cool thing about residential assisted living is these are typically homes that are 10 to 16 residents, depending on what state and what area you're investing in. And the caregiver ratios are typically like 1-5 or 1-8. So you're going from a big box facility where caregiver ratios may be 1-20 or 1-25, perhaps even more, to a home where it's going to be. So the ability to provide way better care and it really improves someone's quality of life is awesome.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor! 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 Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Dr. Alex Schloe here with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. It's actually a recording from my time as a guest on the podcast, The Hunt for Incredible with Gideon. Gideon Spencer is a good buddy of mine, and he is doing boutique hotel investing. And we had a really great episode where he talked about my journey. We talked about assisted living, and we dove deep into the numbers of residential assisted living and just why assisted living is the best opportunity investing in real estate now and for decades to come. We also talked about some investment opportunities that are coming up here in the future. Like right now, we are currently raising capital for accredited investors for a 320-unit independent living deal in Florida. This is a ground-up development projected to triple, that's right, triple your money in approximately 4 years. So if this interests you and you want to get on our investors list, go ahead and click the link below in the show notes and join our investor list, and we'll send out these deal opportunities to you now and in the future. So without any further ado, let's get started with this episode of The Hunt for Incredible being replayed here on the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Assisted living, the silver tsunami, if you will, I think is the best opportunity in real estate investing now and for decades to come. You mentioned it, man, that baby boomer generation. And the crazy thing is that makes up 77 million people. There's 77 million baby boomers. 7 out of 10 of them are going to require long-term care. That's 59 million boomers who are going to need long-term care. And the even crazier thing to think about is right now we're 1 million beds short when it comes to assisted living. And 82% of those folks that are in the assisted living homes right now are part of the silent generation. Okay, so we're not even seeing baby boomers really trickle into these homes just yet. It's coming, but the opportunity is absolutely incredible.
Nobody's born incredible. People who do incredible things simply took the right steps. This is our journey. This is the Hunt for Incredible. All right, welcome back to another show, another episode of the Hunt for Incredible. On this episode, we have my man, Dr. Alex Schloe. Alex and I, we actually met through Brian Lubin. So we became friends on his 30th ski trip in Whistler, Canada, which is a lot of fun. And we hit it off because Alex is actually an investor in a space that I think is going to be a massive wave coming in. And it's far enough out that not a lot of people see it, but it's going to be absolutely huge. And that is assisted living homes. We have more baby boomers retiring than any other generation right now. They make up such a massive percentage of the population. They need to be taken care of. So we'll be diving into all of that. And I think with my background in boutique hotels, I see the assisted living space. And I think, dude, a boutique assisted living home like experience, I think is just on the cusp of being a massive, massive wave. That's not getting enough attention right now, but the people who are riding that wave are going to make a lot of money and do a lot of good. So I'm super stoked to dive into that with Alex. Alex is also a physician. He's a family medicine physician. He's an investor in multiple asset classes. So he's been in long-term rentals, short-term rentals. He's partners on a hotel deal with Blake Daly, who you've also had on the show, who is out at Brian Lubin's 30th. And he's an investor in an RV park. And he's also, I don't know if we're going to have time to dive into, if we can. He's delivered a baby in front of a pickup truck, which is like a random fact that came up right before we hopped on the call. And maybe we'll touch on something else that's really interesting that I'm excited to dive into is Alex raised over $1 million in just 7 days for one of his most recent and biggest deals that he did. So we're definitely going to dissect that. He also has a community that coaches others on how to acquire and operate assisted living homes. He has a podcast called Physicians and Properties with a Facebook community that I'm excited to be a guest on sometime within the next couple of weeks. And what I like about Alex is that he has a strong emphasis on purpose. So not just going for the thing, which is what people get hung up talking about, like what goal are you going for? What are you How are you getting there? But also, are you being thoughtful about your purpose behind it? Are you just following the crowd and trying to get rich and party and have financial and geographic freedom because everyone else says to? Or are you actually going to do something with that fulfills a purpose inside of you, which is vital. So Alex, thanks for being on the show, man. I'm stoked to dive in.
Gideon, me too, man. That was a great intro. You're too kind, and those words were too nice, man. So I appreciate that. Yeah, just to dive in right from the beginning, man, the assisted living, the silver tsunami, if you will, I think is the best opportunity in real estate investing now and for decades to come. You mentioned it, man, that baby boomer generation. And the crazy thing is that makes up 77 million people. There's 77 million baby boomers. 7 out of 10 of them are going to require long-term care. That's 59 million boomers who are going to need long-term care. And the even crazier thing to think about is right now we're 1 million beds short when it comes to assisted living. And 82% of those folks that are in the assisted living homes right now are part of the silent generation. Okay. So we're not even seeing baby boomers really trickle into these homes just yet. It's coming, but the opportunity is absolutely incredible.
Wow. Yeah, I talk a lot on this podcast about the massive transition in wealth that's coming up. A lot of people are talking about it these days, right? 10,000 baby boomers retiring every day. They own roughly 25% of small businesses. But what seldom gets talked about is what happens after that transition. Like, how are those people taken care of? So with that, let's dive right in. So tell us about this assisted living deal that you just raised $1 million over 7 days for.
Thanks, man. Yeah. So this was an independent living deal. So if you're looking at the continuum of assisted living, you typically have like independent living, which is 55 plus. They can still do their activities of daily living. They don't really need a whole lot of assistance with those activities of daily living. Then you have assisted living. They need help with those activities of daily living. That's like bathing, toileting, cleaning, cooking, et cetera. And then you have memory care and some of the more kind of higher medically intensive assisted living homes. Memory care, of course, being with patients with dementia. And then you have nursing homes, skilled nursing facilities. So that's kind of the continuum of assisted living that exists. And so, yeah, I just had the opportunity recently to raise capital for this amazing deal in the Villages of Florida, which is like Disney World for retirement folks. And the reason I had this opportunity was I had a Dr. Francesca Byrne and her husband, Ryan Byrne, on the podcast about a year ago. And I just kept reaching out to them and touching base with them. And they are in the value add multifamily space in high growth areas, Houston, Charleston, Savannah. And I interviewed them. And after I told my wife, I was like, hey, if I have the opportunity to invest with them, I would love to do it because they were just top notch, absolutely incredible people. And so long story short, I just kept trying to provide them value. And if folks were, I felt like would be interested in one of their deals, I would send it their way, or I would just reach out to them and be like, hey, congrats on this opportunity. And so then Ryan emailed me one day. I was like, hey, man, give me a call. And we hopped on a call and he's like, hey, let's raise capital for this deal. I want to bring you in as a GP. And a few things that stand out was one, how incredible of a deal it was. 485 independent living units in the Villages of Florida, which is, like I said, just an amazing place. And it was actually approved for 600. And Greystone, who's going to be the property manager of that independent living facility, they were like, hey, you could build all 600 right now and we'd be able to fill it up. Like that's how much demand there is. And so really cool deal. Ryan was like, hey man, we need to raise $2 million. We'll just both kind of get after it. And out of the 2 million, we'll just split, the acquisition fee and the distributions and so forth based off that, which was awesome. I was terrified initially because I'd never raised more than $650,000 and the minimum investment was $250,000. And I was like, man, like that's crazy. That's a huge minimum investment. Everything else I've done has been $50,000 to $25,000. It was kind of this big, hurdle to get over. Ryan was like, trust me, man, it's going to be easy. Like you're going to see that the minimum investment of $250,000 is easier than $25,000 minimum investment. And he was right, man. Through Physicians and Properties, the podcast I host and the community that I've built, we were able to raise over $1 million in 7 days. And that was through sending a couple emails and hosting a really awesome webinar and then sharing the investment materials that we created. And we ended up oversubscribing like significantly. So we had to have a wait list. And so it was an amazing opportunity. And it was definitely, a mindset shift for me that like really, if you have an incredible deal, you're partnered with incredible people, like you can raise any amount of capital. So don't limit yourself on what that may be.
What type of access do you have to people to have a minimum 200?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So a lot of these investors are physicians and so they have higher incomes. And the cool thing is there's some good tax benefits in this deal. And so they're really interested from that perspective. The other thing that's helpful for assisted living, independent living, raising capital for that asset class is healthcare workers, specifically physicians, but also nurses or, nurse practitioners, physicians, assistants. Like we understand the situation that we're in from a healthcare perspective for seniors. We also understand that the big box facilities, like those huge buildings that you go into and smell like urine and caregivers are taking care of 20 residents. We also realize that that's not the best way to take care of folks. And so healthcare workers are really in tune with that and really interested in investing in that because we see the huge need that is there from an assisted living and independent living perspective.
Dude, I need to connect you with my friend Riley Brennan. So I had him on the show last week, and he worked with medical professionals that were investing in real estate in Ohio, where the Mayo Clinic is. And he was saying that they raised like a $200 million fund from physicians that were at that hospital and started buying up multifamily all over the place. And so he was in charge of deploying that capital. So in terms of thinking about what structuring, like with having access to capital like that and structuring a fund to do something really big at scale, and what does it look like to raise $200 million to just buy up all the assisted living? And then also in the medical space, they understand assisted living better than any other commoner, right? Because they understand like, oh, there actually is like a medical need here to make sure that people are taken care of for, reasons that they understand deeply. So yeah, it would be very interesting to get creative on what scaling really, really big with something like that would look like.
Yeah, man, I'm hoping in a year I can come back on the podcast and tell you that we've done that. But it's crazy to think about, man, raising $200 million for Mayo, in Minnesota. I wonder if Riley, does he work for Black Swan by chance? There's a doc out there, Dr. Sogelberg and Nick, and they have a big real estate company out there in Rochester where Mayo is. I wonder if he's affiliated with them in some way.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't recall those names, but possibly. Yeah. We'll definitely get you connected. That'd be fun.
Yeah. It'd be awesome, man.
200 million is just a number, bro. It's just a number. Yeah. Bro. So with that, let's dive into this. You said the silver tsunami, and you mentioned like the basically the supply and demand that's coming in. Where do you see the most opportunity right now overall, like regardless of people's access to capital and size of deals? Where do you see the biggest opportunity? Is it in smaller boutique assisted living homes that are being, deployed? Is it in converting multifamily into assisted living? Is it going for like really big stuff right now? Like what are your sights set on knowing that you are this far ahead of that tsunami?
Yeah, man. I think there's a ton of opportunity all across the board. If I had to pick a few to like really lean in on, I think residential assisted living is a great opportunity. Memory care homes, great opportunity. The big box facilities really got hit hard with COVID. And so a lot of the trust with that was lost. And so we've kind of stayed away from that. But I do think there's a sweet spot of probably like 30 to 50 residents, kind of the boutique facility like we talked about, Gideon. I think that is a really awesome opportunity as well, because you can still have that personalized care. And if it's a really nice A-class boutique environment, then you're going to be able to attract that private pay resident who can pay more. The beautiful thing of residential assisted living, and if you're sitting here thinking, what the heck is that? Picture a really nice single family, single story home, ranch level home that's large with a large number of bedrooms and bathrooms that's been renovated. So typically you have wheelchair ramps, you have widened door frames, you have grab bars in the shower, the toilets, you have fire suppression systems, sprinklers, fire alarm monitoring. Those are some of the big renovations that are needed. And it's just a house, man. It's just a really nice house that's been renovated to provide personalized care for folks. And that's the cool thing about residential assisted living is these are typically homes that are 10 to 16 residents, depending on what state and what area you're investing in. And the caregiver ratios are typically like 1-5 or 1-8. So you're going from a big box facility where caregiver ratios may be 1-20 or 1-25, perhaps even more, to a home where it's going to be much more personalized, a smaller knit community where the caregiver ratios are 1-5 or 1-8. So the ability to provide way better care and it really improves someone's quality of life is awesome. And the other thing that's important is these are embedded in neighborhoods, right? So these are in neighborhoods. They're already in a community. A lot of times folks are able to move from their house, which they really don't want to leave, right? And because they want to be independent as long as they can, but they can move from their house perhaps into one of these residential assisted living homes just right down the street. So they're able to stay plugged in with folks that they already know, be close to family, et cetera. So it's a really awesome opportunity. And we hit on the demand earlier, Gideon. Man, we're already 1 million beds short right now. So everyone listening to this podcast could go open 10 homes and we wouldn't even put a dent in the number of homes or the number of beds that are going to be needed. That's why we're like, hey, is more and more people just need to know that this is an option. This is an incredible opportunity and a great way to provide way better care for seniors.
What does a return profile look like? So let's, before we dive into that, break it up and say, okay, so you have like the asset itself, then you have management. You can outsource management. If you outsource management, what does the return profile look like on buying an asset look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll break it down a little further too. There's multiple different ways that you can invest in assisted living. There's 4 ways that you can do that. One would be lease to operator, which we call L2O because we try to be cool. But that's basically where you buy the real estate, you lease that out to an operator on a commercial lease. The operator does all the day-to-day care. They're responsible for care of the residents. They're responsible for liability insurance, food, maintenance, et cetera. So lease to operator, you could also buy the real estate and own the operations. So you own the real estate and you're responsible for all the day-to-day care. You could lease your business to someone's house. So essentially you could be the business who's doing the operations and you come to a landlord like me and you lease out my home, or you could passively invest. So those are the 4 big ways. I think it's helpful to distinguish that because that's going to determine what the returns look like. But for example, lease to operator, so you're buying the real estate, you're leasing that out to an operator. That is the more passive approach. Cash flow is going to be a little bit less, but it's more passive. We have 5 of those in Arizona. They're on commercial leases, 3 to 5 years with a 3% annual increase. And each one of those homes cash flows in between $3,000 and $4,000 per month, pretty passively. The linchpin is you have to have a really good operator, right? So if you don't have a good operator and they break the lease, like that's the biggest risk. So you really would need to vet an operator very well, understand where their heart is, make sure they're not in it just to try and make some money. And then if you partner with them, you can grow pretty significantly. That home, for example, our memory care home that we have, that cash flow is about $4,000 per month and we're paying investors 10%. We raised $200,000 for that. And that's passive. Like we don't do anything other than collect the money. So that's an option. If you own the real estate, own the operations, of course, that's going to take a lot more work, right? You're involved in the day-to-day care. You're involved in the day-to-day ops. And we always say you should budget to hire a manager who's going to run those operations for you. If you have a manager in place and you have a full house and you're attracting private pay, we have friends that are, in some homes that we own that are cash flowing $10,000 to $15,000 to $20,000 per month on one home. So it's the only opportunity that I know of in real estate where you can have a single family home and you can reach financial freedom from one home. Perhaps you could do that on a really nice short-term rental, but then you're dealing with like all the headaches of short-term rental management. And of course the dishwasher breaks and the oven breaks on Thanksgiving. And so of course you're dealing with a different set of headaches, but you just got to choose your heart, right? And the cool thing about this is assisted living, you're also providing such a fulfilling need and really getting that purpose out of the investment. So there's a wide spectrum there, but the returns are great. The cost to the resident is typically about $54,000 per year for a residential assisted living for them to go be a resident there. If you're looking at some of these big box facilities, it'd be closer to about $70,000. So it's still a cheaper option for better care and a better community. And then if you're looking at like, hey, maybe I'll just stay home and I'll have a one-on-one nurse or a caregiver who's there 24/7, you're looking at about $78,000. Residential assisted living is still a cheaper option for better care.
Gotcha. So you mentioned the risk of the operator defaulting. What does that risk look like? Are these facilities really difficult to manage? So it's high risk, like a restaurant, the risk of them defaulting is incredibly high. Where does that risk profile sit with outsourcing this to another operator?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely less than a restaurant, but the risk is still there. I think the importance is you need to really network with operators and try and get someone with a really good track record who's done this before and who has the systems in place to scale. And they're really looking to scale. There is a good bit of money to be made in assisted living. And so that's something you always have to weed out. Hey, is this person in assisted living for the right reason? It's a little bit harder to default because you're taking care of those residents. Like you can't just leave seniors high and dry. So that does offer some protection, but it's tough. We have an operator who's kind of struggling a little bit with charging the rate that they thought that they were going to be able to get. And they've been kind of going back and forth with us of like, what are some options that we can have to lower the lease payments? And we're like, well, a lease is a lease. And they're like, okay, we're going to figure it out. And they're partnering with someone else to help out with the marketing and kind of upside and make it more efficient. So You just need to have that communication, but understand that like the risk is certainly there. But if you do the time upfront to vet the operators and really understand where they're coming from and what their experience is, that'll help mitigate that risk. The really good operators, they're looking to grow because they see the benefit of this. And a question we get commonly is, well, why don't they just go buy a home? The reason behind that is if you're talking about 25 to 30% down on $1 million house in Arizona, like that's a huge chunk of capital that they need to put down. And so a lot of times they don't even want to bother with buying more homes because they can scale by just leasing out the business a lot faster, right? And then just paying the lease fee instead of having to deal with owning the real estate. So just finding that, reaching out to them, it's a great way to do it. Healthcare workers like retired nurses or burnt out nurses and healthcare workers make really good managers. So that's another thing to keep in mind is like, hey, if you're going to put a manager in, reaching out to a nurse, healthcare worker, social worker, someone with some experience can be helpful. And you can be like, hey, we'll pay you 6 figures to come manage this home or come manage these 2 homes. They're going to jump at that opportunity over, working the night shift at the hospital.
Are there any zoning or permitting requirements for something like that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So that's the first thing you need to look into where you're thinking about investing is what are the licensing requirements? There's going to be licensing and zoning requirements both for the state and also the locality that you're potentially going to invest in. So you're using Arizona again for an example, like the state of Arizona has their requirements. For example, the max number of residents you can have licensed is 10. And then as you get further into the specific locality requirements, they may have specific regulations on, okay, you can only have an assisted living home, in these locations, and it cannot be within 1,200 feet of another. And maybe the zoning has to be a certain way. You have to have the safety, there's safety regulations, of course, that are important. And then sometimes there'll be square footage requirements. So a bedroom would need to be a certain square footage to have 2 residents in, or a certain square footage to just have 1 resident. And that's going to vary too. So there are definitely some significant zoning and licensing requirements that you need to look into. Always start with the state first and then just work your way down. And another tip for folks who are listening, who are interested in this, go in person and talk to your zoning office, because a lot of times they don't understand what residential assisted living is. And they hear assisted living and they immediately think like this big box facility, like, hey, they want to build this big box facility in a residential zone. That makes no sense. So go explain to them what you're doing. And that can be really helpful as well.
That makes a lot of sense. What is your process for raising capital? So you mentioned earlier, sent out a few emails. I'd like to hear let's call it like a 2-phase approach, raising capital without a brand versus raising capital with the brand in your podcast and things like that. What was your process and experience for both?
For sure, man. I never tried to raise capital without the brand, so I cannot really weigh in on that much. And I hope that is a lesson for everyone listening that you need to have a brand. It's going to make it a lot easier. And your brand doesn't necessarily have to be something fancy or crazy, but I think that everyone here that's listening to this, that's thinking, I want to raise capital at some point, you just got to post your story. You just got to post what you're doing. You have to be willing to be comfortable being uncomfortable and get out there and share what you're doing. Otherwise, people are never going to know. And that could be as simple as like sending a text message to a friend from high school and being like, hey man, I hope you're doing well. Was thinking about our days playing on the football team. I'm working on residential assisted living. If that's something that's ever of interest to you, or most important, if you know of someone else who may be interested in investing in one of these deals, reach out to me. And that's a great question because it doesn't feel like you're selling anyone. You're just offering an opportunity. You're just connecting and reaching out to people. And maybe your buddy comes back and they're like, hey, I want to invest and also have 5 friends who are really interested in this as well. So that email or that text message of, hey, do you know someone else who may be interested in this or interested in this deal is going to be really helpful. From a brand perspective, same way, man. Like I do a weekly podcast and I host like free discovery calls with folks, like 15-minute discovery calls they can sign up for. And I just trying to provide as much value as I possibly can. I mean, we're both friends with Brian Lubin. Perfect example of someone who just gives as much as he can, builds those relationships, builds that network up. And then when you get to the point where you have the ask to raise capital, people already know, like, and trust you, and they want to do that. So it's been really awesome, man. I think the podcast was the best decision I ever made from a networking perspective, from a deal flow perspective, and from a raising capital perspective, because folks just listen to that every week and they know what I'm doing and they know, like, and trust me. And I've been really fortunate to raise capital in that regard.
I love that, dude. Yeah, I'm obsessive about telling people to build in public, whatever you're doing. There's this idea that you have to achieve a certain level of success or have a certain level of experience before you can share your story and teach people. But you don't have to always teach people as the expert. You can also share your story as the person who's on a journey learning and buying these deals. That's something that I wish I had done earlier, is share my journey of, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing getting into real estate. This is my story, and documenting it as I went. I'm glad that I did start, and it's been one of the greatest force multipliers for everything that I'm doing. Like I said, I don't remember if it was on this podcast or the one right before. I've had back-to-back podcasts today. So I might be repeating myself. I don't think I am though, which is like, when I was raising capital, there was somebody that I reached out to who I hadn't spoken to in a decade. And we hopped on a call because they said that they were interested in investing in the deal. And a few minutes in, mentioned, like, they literally stopped me and said, "Oh no, dude, I know what you're doing. I've been following you along. I'm down to invest." And literally a few minutes in, they invested 50 grand. And it was the best return on my 5 minutes I've ever had in my entire life. And it was literally just from building in public and sharing the story and building that trust. Cause like I said, I hadn't talked to him in a year or in a decade. In a decade prior, like we knew each other. We were friends, but we weren't like super close. So it's literally just like building rapport with people by sharing your journey and your story over anything else. It's one of the greatest force multipliers that I have ever come across.
Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. As a physician, balancing your medical career with a growing real estate portfolio can be challenging. That's where Dr. Doc comes in. They don't just offer loans, they provide tailored financial solutions designed by doctors for doctors. Dr. Doc has already helped customers secure millions fast, headache-free funding for their real estate investments. With their streamlined process, you get quick liquidity, no prepayment penalties, and a soft credit check, meaning no impact on your credit score if a deal falls through. Looking to expand your investment property portfolio? Dr. Doc offers competitive rates and customized options to help you build wealth and diversify your assets. They also offer solutions for consolidating debt or home improvements. Join the thousands of doctors who trust Dr. Doc for fast funding and personalized support. Say goodbye to financial roadblocks and hello to your next investment success. Yeah, for sure. And, I think people are scared or, have that imposter syndrome of sharing content or starting their own podcast because, maybe there's a lot of podcasts. But dude, it doesn't matter how many people listen to your podcast or who watches your content, as long as it's the right people. And it only takes a few people to raise a pretty significant amount of capital anyways. And so it's just being willing to get out there and just keep providing tons and tons of value, and it's going to come back to you. I love that, man. I completely agree. It's wild for me when I hop on a call with somebody and they're like, "Hey, how's Jack doing? How's Owen? Oh, how was your camping trip?" And I'm like, I've never talked to this person before in my life. Like, how do they know that? And then I realized it's because I share my journey and I share my life on the podcast. And the other cool thing too, Gideon, is we're going to be able to go back and listen to this in like 15, 20 years. Our kids are going to be able to listen to this podcast, and they're going to be able to learn from us and from our journey and from our struggles and from our failures and also those big wins. And so it's really cool to be able to document that for the future as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. So you have a community. Let's break down a bit what diving into and scaling that community and how you deliver value there looks like. So what did that kick off and launch into, I guess, growing it look like?
Yeah, so we have a community called the Row Room Assisted Living Mastermind. And that really started because we were looking for more and more operators for lease to operator homes. So we started a Facebook group that's like residential assisted living, investors, operators, caregivers, or something like that. If you type in residential assisted living in Facebook, it'll come right up. And we started that just looking for more operators just to build our Rolodex. And then it quickly grew to, I think we have 13,500 people in that group now, man, which is crazy. And I guess a year and a couple months. And in that community, we were just trying to provide a bunch of value, share what we were learning, kind of share our journey along the way. And we had a lot of folks reaching out to us and like, "Hey, I want to do coaching with you. Can you coach me? Can you help me?" And I'm a full-time family medicine physician in the Air Force. And obviously I'm doing a lot of other things. And most importantly to me is my time with my family, my wife and my two boys. And I was like, I don't have the time to do one-on-one coaching. And so there was that avenue. And then we had other people who were coming to us and they were saying like, "Hey, I've participated in some other assisted living courses and it didn't really provide the value that I was looking for." And at the end, they tried to upsell me on consulting. for $35,000 to $45,000. And so really there was only a couple of different avenues for education in the assisted living space. It was these outdated courses that then upsell you, or one-on-one, guru mentorship that's $50,000 or so pretty expensive. My partners, Charlie, Luke, and I are part of the War Room Mastermind, which is for military, active duty retirees, veterans. And we've been in that mastermind for about 5 years, and it's completely changed our life. Shout out to Dave Perret if he's listening to this. And we realized that's the perfect opportunity for assisted living. Like there's no mastermind that exists. Let's just take everything we love about the War Room. Let's take everything that I love about Action Academy, and let's make a mastermind for assisted living and do that. So it took a while. It took some convincing of my partners because we also had imposter syndrome in regards to that as well. And then we realized if we start this mastermind and we start having folks open and operate these incredible assisted living homes, each one that opens is taking care of 10 to 16 seniors, and they're getting high quality care. And we need more and more of that. And so we launched the War Room Mastermind. I think we had about 30-ish members who joined immediately, which was amazing. We're super fortunate to do 6 figures in less than 6 months on that mastermind program. We have about 65 members right now, paying members right now, and it's been really cool. And then we partnered with a bunch of experts. So every month and every other Saturday, we have experts come in and talk on a specific topic. Last night, I was the quote unquote expert when we talked about raising capital. And then on Saturday, we're having a call with a guy who managed a bunch of big box facilities and now has seen the benefit of residential assisted living. And he owns and operates some assisted living homes, and he's looking to scale. And so we just try and provide as much value as possible. And we use the school community, SKOOL, that Alex Mosey's a big fan of. So we've been able to build out a bunch of courses and modules throughout that. So we're able to provide really good education to lay the foundation, and then the community and accountability of a mastermind, which is so important, and then bringing in the experts as well. So it's been awesome, man. It has been so cool. And we've learned so much through that. And now we're at a really sweet spot of, members are buying land and starting to develop their own assisted living, or they're opening their own assisted living homes. And it's just been awesome to see kind of that ripple effect of the mastermind.
Yeah, that's awesome. So were the majority of those initial members from that Facebook community?
Yep. The majority are from that Facebook community. And interestingly, or maybe not interestingly, the majority are healthcare workers, are physicians. And I think that's probably because I obviously talked to a lot of them and through the podcast and stuff, they've learned about it. But I also think they see that need. And so it's pretty cool too, because obviously full-time physicians don't have a whole lot of time to own and operate an assisted living home. So we're seeing a lot of people start to form partnerships where, hey, I'll be the capital, I'll kind of help run the real estate side of things as the physician. And then they're partnering with someone who wants to run the ops side of things. And so it's been really cool to see those partnerships build out and start blossoming as well, because I think that's a really cool way to do it. Because it is a lot of work. I mean, I don't want to undercut the amount of work it is to own and operate one of these homes.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it's quite a bit, pretty full and intensive. So me coming from the boutique hotel space, like traditionally boutique hotels are the very hands-on that people think about when they think about real estate. But I can imagine assisted living is quite a few notches above that. So yeah, hats off to you guys. That's amazing. That's amazing. Dude, this is really exciting and really inspiring for a handful of reasons. I'd love to dive into the purpose, because I know that that's meaningful to you. What purpose do you have underlining behind all of this? And how do you think people should be thinking about going into something like this?
Yeah. So my first job, actually, my first true paying job, I was 16, maybe 15, and had to get my worker's license or whatever. But I worked as a handyman / maintenance man / cook at a assisted living facility. And it was probably about a 45 bed assisted living facility, and made some really great connections there with some of the residents. And there's just little things that stick out, man, throughout that time that I was like, I cannot believe someone's paying $5,000 or $6,000 a month or whatever it may have been to stay in this place, and they're not getting high quality care. And I remember one guy named Dick, he was an executive at IBM, and he asked me to come in his room one day to take a look at his TV, because he's like, hey, this TV doesn't work. It's broken. And I've been trying to watch it, and I've been trying to get help for the last 3 days from the caregivers, and they're just ignoring me. Do you mind taking a look? All it was the batteries on his remote were dead, and it took 3 days. And it's something as simple as that, where it's like, man, this guy's paying $5,000-$6,000 a month to be here, and no one's even willing to change the batteries of his remote. Now, obviously that's a small thing, but also rotating as a physician through a lot of these nursing homes. I was seeing residents with pressure ulcers that should have never happened, that are laying in their urine for way too long because caregivers can't get there in time because they're taking care of 20 other residents. there's just such a need for these homes and this more personalized care and a much more hands-on approach that's a big driving factor for me. The other thing too is my grandmother passed away of ALS when I was in med school, and she never made it to one of these assisted living homes, but she did go on hospice and have some really good end of life care. And that was a huge game changer for her and for the family, and gave us a lot of closure as well, because she was able to really die peacefully and die with dignity. And ALS is an absolutely terrible condition, but she was able to do that with grace and die with grace. And so that's always been a motivating factor for me, is like, can we do the same thing for our residents going forward? And can we do the same thing for every senior in America?
That's impactful, man. That's very powerful. At the Hunt for Incredible, we believe that questions are the answers. So what questions do you feel people need to ask themselves or others to be successful in the space?
Absolutely. I think one really easy question is just ask yourself, what type of environment do you want your mom, dad, grandma, grandpa? What type of environment do you want them spending out their last days? And what type of care do you want them to receive? And if there's nothing in your area that provides that, maybe you're the one that needs to open it. Maybe you're the one that needs to start it.
Alex, where can people find you?
Absolutely, man. You can find me all over the place. I'm the only Alex Schloe I think that exists. So just Google me. That's fine. But I'm on Instagram. Schloe3 is my personal. Physicians and Properties is my physician account there. And then I'm on LinkedIn. Just Google Alex Schloe. And then if you want to know more about assisted living, we have a free 10-step guide on our website. So if you type in theralroom.com or the RALroom.com, that'll come right up for you. You can sign up and get a free 10-step guide. And if you want to know more beyond that, just reach out to me. I'm always happy to connect and chat with awesome folks.
Awesome. Alex, thanks for being on the show. And let's start a $200 million fund, man.
Here, let's go, Gideon. Looking forward to it, man. We'll start the boutique hotel, if you will, for seniors, man. Let's go.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.